So what we're going to be doing here today is that we're welcoming you to our Always Ready Town Hall, which this is our third of the year. And it's our opportunity to check in. And as we enter into the conversation we're going to share our community agreements. I'm going to share a little bit about Arts Ed New Jersey because I think there'll be some people here who are newer to our work. But I'll keep it brief, I promise, because we want to spend the bulk of our time um, learning and listening and asking questions about some of the unknowns and see what we can make known. And we're really excited to have our special guest here, Tushar Swain from Americans for the Arts, who is a student of this and just came from the Hill today and probably has up to the minute updates for us. And I'm going to share a little bit about what's going on locally. I by no means am the expert that Tushar is, but I think I am going to lean into our wonderful community here because I know we also have other experts in the room. And then we're going to spend a little bit time sharing some of our tools around being always ready in these unknown times that you can use for advocacy proactively and for targeted needs. And then we want to spend a little bit of time hearing what else you might need that Arts Ed New Jersey could help you and be supportive of. So that's our roadmap for the next hour and 20 minutes. So welcome everyone. So many of you have seen our community agreements. They've come out of a couple of years of conversations with folks, and we use them primarily when we have conversations and we're in breakouts and when we're in person, but they matter at all times. But for this one, I wanted to just lean into a couple more on the right side, where we want to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable for our actions and each other. And when we do this, we have to be sure that we take care of ourselves and each other, always keeping that the care and kindness at top of mind. And in this political environment right now, I think it's the second one here is we used to say two truths can be true at the same time. We've realized that it's more than two truths. There are multiple truths out there, and that we're going to lean into that reality and accept that and listen with curiosity and to understand, to not persuade. And for many topics that are as important as arts education or some of the issues that we're facing and politically, uh, we're not going to be able to have closure by the end of this hour and a half. Wouldn't that be wonderful if everyone had a magic wand? But so we're just going to expect non-closure and accept it. And most importantly, we love this one. This came from the community directly. Is like if you're going to speak or type, feel permission to speak in draft form. It doesn't have to have all your ideas fully formed and thought through. So I'm hoping everyone will agree with either a thumbs up, a heart, or some emoji to let me know that we're ready to go. Thank you. And yay. Plus, I just wanted to see some hearts. So there we go. A little bit about us. So Arts Ed New Jersey is a collective impact organization. Basically, that means we are fighting for arts for every child, and that's a big issue, and we need everybody at the table to do that. That's folks from higher ed, arts educators, school boards, principals, administrators, all kinds of people who have a stake in ensuring that every child has an arts education. And so I'm explaining this a little bit because you are part of that ecosystem. Even if you're not currently on a committee or on a board or in one of our Always Ready task force, you are part of advancing this mission, which is basically every day arts every day for every child, every year, at all arts. That is our vision. And we want that arts to be a high quality, high impact, culturally responsive, healing centered arts education. And we recently finished a strategic plan. Took us a couple years, year and a half, because we really spent a lot of time engaging and talking with our community, our constituents, and we landed here with four goals. First one is to really focus on increasing equity in arts education by identifying where the gaps are for people not only who have access but are not participating in that culturally sustaining arts education. And inside that is also people, but also disciplines. We've noticed, for example, while most students have access to music and visual arts, only 3% have access to theater and dance. So how do we up that? So that's part of the equity goal. We're going to lean even more than ever into state policy and advocacy practices. We've had a wonderful Arts Ed Now and For All campaign for over 10 years. But we also have to start looking at how we might change some policies. It should not have been a but. That was a yes and. And looking at ways we can, where our levers are to make change in terms of code, etc. And why we do this, we always are really working hard to strengthen the field in any way we can. We have many associations who have similar roles, but where are those gaps and how can we help support our educators, our teaching artists, our nonprofits, everybody in the ecosystem? And goal 4, there wouldn't be a good and successful strategic plan if you didn't have a goal 4, which built out your infrastructure. So that is who we are and where we are aiming. We have a very big and bold new plan. But as we were entering into this work, we realized as our climate and culture is changing, and it's sometimes like it feels a little bit like we're fighting shadows. We don't really know where the fight is. There are so many fights. Where's our lane, etc. We landed on something that came out of our really effective work. I think my predecessor and the people on our currently on our team worked on um, preparing guidance for COVID. And that guidance was really helpful for folks who were trying to teach virtually and then hybrid, et cetera, and how to keep their students safe. But at the end of the day, we realized that so much of what we learned during that process, we had to be always ready. And so we are leaning into our armor of being always ready. And those of you who are in the arts or care about the arts, you know that we don't have time as arts organizations to, oh, when a window opens, go and spend 3 months planning to figure out how you're going to push that window open. So we are going to be always ready. And these town halls are focusing on that. And some of the principles that we're leaning into is that arts education is a social justice issue. Education is a social justice issue, so arts education is. And so it has that, it brings to mind the kind of fight that you might fight for any other social justice issue. We are going to seize opportunities and be prepared to pivot, 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 pivot as needed. In this world where there's so much to focus on, we are going to find our lanes, which plates we're going to keep spinning. We're going to work together within our sector, but we are going to learn and work across sectors more than we have already. And one of the key things we're saying, we are not going to pre-comply or over-comply to any potential federal or executive orders, letters, whatever, or threats. We're waiting till we hear some facts. And I guess I love 6 and 7 because we're going to microdose joy wherever we can. We're going to support each other in that, bring together each other in community. And I have found one of the best things to keep me going is learning, continuing to expand my mind. So this is our preamble. I want you to hopefully save the dates for our future town halls. We're going to do one a month, one on April 16th and another on May 15th. We're aiming to keep this time from 4:30 to 6. So please mark your calendar and please share with us if there are any topics that you're interested in us talking about. So now I get to breathe. Um, I'm really, really excited that Tushar Swain has agreed to be with us today. I have been following him for many, many years. He and his team at Americans for the Arts have been an incredible and important guides to us, and I've attended every single one of their meetings. He is the public policy director for Americans for the Arts, but before he joined Americans for the Arts, he was the director of public policy and advocacy for the National Association for Music Education, where he spent similar duties with federal and state policy initiatives really supporting music educators. But before that, he was also had a career on Capitol Hill where he was focused on tax policy and judiciary and healthcare issues, and was a communications consultant for presidential and congressional campaigns. But I love this part about his bio is that Tushar is a proud husband of a teacher and a father of two daughters. And as in those roles, he's reminded every single day the importance of arts in a child's life, and he brings that commitment to his advocacy every day in his work. So I am going to turn this over to you, Tushar, to share with us what you're seeing on the Hill in Washington, federal. And we were hoping we would be talking about the NEA, what's happening in arts policy, as well as education policy now that we have a new commissioner in the Department of Ed.
Hi there, can you all hear me?
Yes. And when
Okay.
you get that up, and please, folks, feel free, we're going to monitor the chat. Feel free to put your questions in along the way. We'll try to take them at the end, just because it might get answered along the way. But if not, we will make sure we answer your questions.
Okay, can you all see my screen?
You're good.
We're good now? Great. Thank you so much, Wendy, for that lovely introduction. I've been friends for a while. We've certainly crossed paths many a times. I see a couple of friends on the screen too. So hello to you, and then just a special thank you to the Arts Ed New Jersey staff who helped me get set up here today. It's a very interesting time. I think the one thing I'm going to start talking about from an appropriations standpoint and what's happening, and the reason why I'm going to do that is because there are, two issues that we are following as it pertains to arts education. We are following the National Endowment for the Arts. That is, our primary issue here, and there is a primary issue. And there obviously is an arts education component to it. And then we'll talk a little bit of arts education. But the one thing that kind of just spurred me to just take a minute, based on what Wendy had said, is that the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was passed in 1965, just around the same time that some other very historic laws were passed, such as the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And the Civil Rights Act is actually intertwined into the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the federal law of the land. And it was done so to prevent segregation. So funds to public schools would not be, or the federal government would not issue funds to public schools if they were segregated. And so that's how that that's how that civil rights component became so important in the federal education space. And so I say that just to remind us all of what um, Wendy told us, that uh, education is a civil rights issue. The current iteration of the federal law is the Every Student Succeeds Act, which includes music education and arts education as subjects that should be taught, and thus it's a civil rights issue, in my opinion, that every student has access to the arts K through 12. So thank you, Wendy, for reminding us for that. Um, so what we're dealing with in Washington, D.C., if you look at this slide, trying to we're dealing right now with two fiscal years, fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026. So uh, in a properly functioning system, Congress the federal fiscal year is from October 1st to September 30th of the following year. And so proper in a properly functioning entity, Congress is supposed to have their FY funds appropriated or passed and signed by the president before that September 30th deadline. That has not been happening of late. And over the last 2 years, there has been this scenario where Congress has been working on two fiscal year appropriations at the same time. And so we are coming to the end, hopefully, though it does come with some possible contingencies and things that we're not thrilled with, but maybe not the worst thing in the world if funding levels stay the same, that we move on from FY25 and have a dedicated effort to FY26. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but right now, and I know that Wendy's working on some advocacy that she'll probably tell you about. But right now, the House of Representatives, as of last night, passed their FY25. Well, what they're actually going to do is, if you look at the bottom, where in the yellow, they're going to fund the government for the remainder of FY 2025. So until September 30th, at FY fiscal year 2024 levels. So as that pertains to some of the issues that we're dealing with, and we'll get into those, that should be level funding for the upcoming year. Of course, that ends up being a little bit less than level funding whenever you take into consideration things like cost of living and inflation. There will, it's a little bit of a decrease, but I think given the environment we're in, it is probably the best case scenario, but there are some things that we should probably talk about that could potentially happen that would be harmful to both the NEA and the Department of Education. So that's what's on the left side. We're hopefully coming to the end of that. On the right side is as we're ending the FY25 process, we are right at the beginning of the FY fiscal year 2026 process. And so the president gave uh, uh, his his presentation to the joint Congress on what his initiatives are for the upcoming year. He will provide what's called a skinny budget, probably sometime later this month, and then a full budget probably closer to May, where he puts numbers to the vision that he just recently gave members of Congress. I think from there, we will learn a little bit about what he plans to do with some of the programs that he tried to, that he recommended to zero out in his first term. And some of those programs are the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities. On the education side, he proposed the elimination of Title II Part A, which is the professional development block grant that comes from the federal government to school districts. There's a well-rounded component to that, meaning that arts educators and music educators should be eligible to use those funds. Title IV, which is the newest block grant, which is now, I guess, getting close to 10 years old, but new in the sense that it combined 22 different programs from the No Child Left Behind grant into one block grant, in which you can use those funds for safe and healthy schools, for technology, and then for a well-rounded education. And so a well-rounded education includes art and music. I would also contend that it should also be in the safe and healthy bucket as well. But in any case, those funds can be used for a well-rounded education, and the president did zero it out in his budgets. So those are things that we want to take a look and see if he's trending in that same way again, or if he has something different in his mind. And then from there, what Congress does is that they divide, um, they they look at the president's budget, they determine what they agree with him on and what they don't. Then they come up with two numbers. One is for defense, one is for non-defense discretionary. And discretionary spending means spending that is appropriated during a fiscal year. That's kind of opposite of what's called mandatory spending. So spending that has been enacted by law, forever until it's amended. So think, for example, like Medicare or Medicaid. Those are laws that say that you need to provide that spending every year, regardless of what's going on with the fiscal year appropriations. So then from there, they go into 12 into their 12 individual appropriations bills. And so they divide those top lines into 12 appropriations bills. So, for example, the Department of Interior subcommittee houses the National Endowment for the Arts and National Endowment for the Humanities budget. So that's something that we take a close look at. The Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Appropriations Subcommittee houses the Department of Education funding. So that's something that we look very closely at. And then, like I said, in a fully functioning Congress, they have subcommittee, full committee votes, and then ultimately a House and Senate conference where they come together to try to bring one bill together to pass, and then for the president to sign. So I starting here again with the National Endowment for the Arts and National Endowment for the Humanities. This has many different programs that go beyond arts education, but arts education is a crucial component to the National Endowment for the Arts, particularly as it pertains to community engagement in arts education. Certainly, we believe that every school district should have a certified arts educator. We understand that not every school district can have that, and so community arts engagement is very helpful in those areas, as well as even if you do have an arts educator, they will tell you, right, that connection to the community is very important. So the NEA does fund services like that. And so that was funded at $207 million for um, next year or for 2024. So because of this continuing resolution, it's going to be funded likely again if the Senate passes this legislation by the end of the week. It's going to be funded again at $207 million. Um, we are going to advocate next year for $209 million, a $2 million increase. And the reason behind that is that the Senate bill last year provided a bump for the National Endowment for the Arts. So we will go with that number, as our champions have told us that we should go with that number until we hear otherwise. So we'll do that. And then just the last thing to mention is that the NEA through Congress over the last 2 years has there have been attempts on the House side, particularly with what's called the House Freedom Caucus, which is the very conservative wing of the Republican Party, has tried to eliminate funding through floor votes, eliminate funding completely in 2023, and then eliminate funding by about 55% um, in 2024. So we expect that no matter what the bill is funded at the committee level, we will expect another floor vote. And so advocacy is going to be very important for that. This is again, I think this is what always gives me hope. And again, we know that and we're seeing, right, that what happened with the first Trump administration and what's happening with the second Trump administration is not a linear equation, right? There have been a lot of differences, particularly because the president you know, truthfully does have a mandate. I think that there is a lot of there's a lot of room to question how much of a mandate he has. But because of that, and particularly because of his instating uh, of the Doge, that this is a different time, and so while we can't expect the same things to happen, I am comforted by the fact that, as you can see here, the president decided the president proposed elimination of both the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities in every year, proposed the elimination. And not only did that not happen, but we had slight increases, approximately about $5 million each year. And that's because of the bipartisanship of Congress and the friends that we have both on the Democratic side of the aisle and the Republican side of the aisle. Again, I think that, all that to say is that because of this mandate, because of the pressure that the Doge is putting on federal agencies, as well as Congress, it does remain to be seen what they will do this time, and that's why I think our advocacy is going to be super important. But again, I bet on us as the arts community, as the arts education community, because we did it before and we worked so well together as a community. We're going to need to do that again. And so these are just some key members that we consider friends, both on the arts side as well as the arts education side. Tom Cole is the chair of the Appropriations Committee, been a strong component of the National Endowment for the Arts as well as for arts education. Mike Simpson has been just he's from Idaho. He's just been really a solid force behind the scenes to continue to fund the NEA at at appropriate levels during times where the House of Representatives has tried to zero out that funding. We continue to have Susan Collins and Patty Murray on the Senate side who work very well together. They are the chair and the vice chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee and huge supporters of arts education. And then Lisa Murkowski, who is chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee. And maybe Wendy and I can talk a little bit more later about the New Jersey delegation. I know that we had a nice conversation about that, and I think that that would probably be helpful for you all. Um, one of the other main differences, right, is not just the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE, but also just in unprecedented level of executive orders that continue to come. Somewhere, over 85 executive orders have been issued by President Trump, by far the most, over the course of um, a month and a half or 2 months. I think um, these are two these are some executive orders and actions that have been harmful to the arts community in general, and then we can maybe talk a little bit about ones that are specific to education and then arts education. But the first one is the executive order on initial rescissions of harmful executive orders and actions. And so this revokes President Biden's this was actually a rescission of, I think, something like 75 executive orders in one executive order. And among those was one that we, advocated highly for during the Biden administration, which promotes the arts, humanities, museums, and library services. This rescission eliminated the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities, which was an advisory committee to the White House, and unfortunately now no longer exists. The good news is that the NEA has taken on some of those duties, and so we're hopeful that they can maintain some of the work that they did. But obviously, we'll talk a little bit about the NEA's capacity in a second, and that's a real issue. The executive order on ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. We'll talk a little bit about how that has affected the National Endowment for the Arts in a minute. This has had impact not just on the NEA, but on the Department of Education, and unfortunately, and going through some legal challenges on the private sector as well, and particularly large companies and large nonprofits were targeted, unfortunately, during in this executive order. On January 27th, there was an Office of Management Budget Directive for a funding freeze. From everything that we've heard, this did not affect the National Endowment for the Arts. It did not, it does not appear to have affected most programs at the Department of Education. But I think the thing to take from this is that this OMB directive also provided or directed government agencies to submit to the Office of Management and Budget, which reports directly to the president, on what programs they recommend be cut for the following fiscal year 2026 year. And that deadline was March 14th, which is also the deadline for this FY25 funding. So they are required to submit by Friday their recommendations for programmatic cuts to the Office of Management and Budget. So that'll be coming up, and I think that will hopefully we can get some insight. Hopefully some of that will be made public so we know how to properly react from an advocacy standpoint. And then the executive order to downsize the federal government. We're feeling that here every day, on a personal level. I was telling Wendy, we have friends, neighbors who are just unfortunately highly impacted by this. And the big issue is how haphazardly it is being done, and so not much time to prepare, or at least take some comfort in knowing that there's a legitimate process involved. And so I think that that has a lot of people in Washington, D.C. feeling significant anxiety right now. So the NEA, what I will say is about the NEA is that they have really had their act together in trying to quickly comply with the president's uh, executive orders. They have a woman who was their former chair, Marianne Carter, during the Trump administration. She was the chair of the NEA then. She's serving right now as a senior advisor, and unclear if she will become the chair again or not. But they did make some changes to NEA grants, rolling, what Marianne Carter has said was a strategic move to save the funds in the Challenge America grants, which deal with which gives some preference to smaller arts organizations as well as um, uh, in areas of underserved communities, so rural and urban communities. They rolled this into the grants for arts projects, which is the larger grant program. Again, to do this to protect the funds, the NEA career staff, who are just lovely people there, are, have said that the preference of small organizations as well as underserved communities will continue for this program. Of course, we wait to see exactly how that's going to be operationalized, but they are trying to keep some of those parameters. This is something that has been of great um, that we've seen a lot in the news in the arts community, and the assurance of compliance certificates. Basically, whenever you apply for an NEA grant, as well as whenever you are chosen for an NEA grant, you have to complete assurance of compliance certificates, that you are in compliance with certain laws as well as executive orders. These have long existed. What has not existed are the scope of the executive orders that have been initiated by President Trump, and the effects that that have on an arts community as it pertains to, freedom of expression, First Amendment issues. Um, and so one of the things that we had learned about after the president's executive order is that the National Endowment for the Arts stated that applicants must assure that they are compliant with DEIA and transgender executive orders. So there are two executive orders. One I probably should have put on that last slide, but I mentioned the DEI executive order. There is a separate transgender executive order that the president, incorporated many things, such as, stopping the use of pronouns within the federal government, incorporated things like bathrooms in federal facilities, etc. So those were two separate things, but they obviously both impact the National Endowment for the Arts, and as we'll see, the Department of Education as well. Both of these assurances have been temporarily paused. There is a U.S. District Court ruling by the United States District of Maryland that basically sued the administration, saying that the DEIA executive order was unconstitutional, mainly because they did not give proper details on how to comply with DEIA. Like what does DEIA mean? There was a lack of definition. While that is being a preliminary injunction has been filed. I don't know if that will be made permanent by the court or not, but my anticipation is that this is a big enough issue for the president that he will continue to appeal these through higher courts of law. And it would not surprise me if this one makes it to the Supreme Court. The second one was the transgender executive order. And this was a lawsuit that was actually specifically filed against the National Endowment for the Arts by the ACLU, as well as one of our partners that we work with, the Theater Communications Group. And basically, a couple of things have happened because of that lawsuit. Right now, applicants do not need to comply with the transgender assurances if they, if they work on promoting transgender issues. They don't have to comply with that. They don't have to comply with, or they don't have to assure, I guess is the right word, um, uh, um, those projects that they work on. What does remain in place is, however, that no projects that you actually apply for can focus on transgender issues. So that is something that Theater Communications Group and the ACLU continue to litigate, and our hope is that um, uh, they make some headway there. America 250 is one focus. So the 250th year celebration of the Declaration of Independence. It's listed as one focus. I think that whenever the arts community saw that, they thought that that was going to be the main or only focus, but they will continue to focus on things like creative forces, which deals with veterans and Department of Defense. They'll focus on their arts education grants as well. The career folks there wanted to make that clear. And so, talking more from the community arts perspective, and we're going to talk a little bit about, just some of the arts education polling that we've had. But this is from our great research team. They worked on a Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 survey, and found out some fantastic economic data, which may be helpful to you. And maybe after I'm done, I can drop that in the chat. But there was also some great surveys, surveying questions. And again, I think that if I bet on us as arts advocates, I also bet on the American people and their support of the arts. And I think it's just something always for us to be reminded of, that nearly 80% of Americans believe arts and culture is important to their communities, businesses, economies, and local jobs. 86% believe that arts and culture is important to their communities' quality of life and livability. This is a great one. Almost 90% agree that the activity or venue they were attending, if that is a source of neighborhood pride. And nearly as many people said that they would feel a sense of loss if that activity or venue was no longer available. So just a reminder for us as we're dealing with difficult times that the overwhelming majority of people are on our side and they support the arts overwhelmingly. So moving then on to the Department of Education, I will say I'm not as optimistic about things happening on this side as I am at the NEA. The NEA has Marianne Carter there, close connection with the White House, already making some changes that she thinks will ensure that the NEA remains relevant during the next 4 years of the president. This is just a different situation because of the philosophy of what the president unfortunately thinks about the Department of Education. And this, is being put into motion this week due to the swearing in, I guess now last week, by Linda McMahon as Secretary of Education, and then on day one releasing her memo, our department's final mission. And while she didn't specifically say that um, that you know while she didn't specifically identify the elimination of the department, she outlined three convictions: parents are the primary decision maker in their children's education. Taxpayer funded education should refocus on meaningful learning in math, reading, science, and history. Um, Arts education is not listed there, and nor are many other subjects. The Every Student Succeeds Act has 22 well-rounded subjects. Only four are listed here. And then they say not divisive DEI programs and gender ideology. And then post-secondary education should be a path to a well paying career aligned with workforce needs. So, you know, that was kind of, putting a stake in what her vision is. Then we heard uh, last night that staff at the Department of Education received reduction in force notices, and that nearly half of the department's workforce is currently being terminated. So that's up to 4,000 jobs, which is just, highly unfortunate. Good people who work there, career service folks who have dedicated their entire life to education, including arts education. So just a really, unfortunate and sad time here in Washington, D.C. Just some things we have heard a lot about what the president um, can and can't do. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that, but the president cannot legally eliminate the Department of Education without Congress. He needs both the House and the Senate to pass it. He may have the votes in the House, though I'm not sure if he would. In the Senate, you need 60 votes to pass this. There are 53 Republicans, so he would need he would need 7 Democrats to join those Republicans. I can assure you that not all of those Republicans support the termination. So he would need 60 votes. And so while that feels, good for us, and I do think that helps protect us, and I do think that talking to members of Congress and getting their support to not eliminate the Department of Education is important. I do think that the president will use all means that he has through the executive um, to to try and at least make the Department of Education less relevant in our education system. The administration, uh, some things that they can't do, they cannot expand private school choice nationwide, as maybe his executive order suggests. That would be a programmatic change that needs to be approved by Congress. And then Wendy had talked about, states setting the curriculum and academic standards. They're the ones who set that. The president does not. And then these are just some of the executive orders that are directly um, dealing with the Department of Education and just education policy, expanding educational freedom and opportunity for families. And again, that's what I was talking about, directing several federal agencies to develop plans for expanding and funding universal K through 12 scholarship programs. We know because of some great work done by Bob Morrison that arts education does not fare well in school choice environments. Ending radical indoctrination in K through 12 schooling develop strategies, eliminating federal funding or support for illegal and discriminatory treatment and indoctrination in K through 12 schools, including based on gender ideology and discriminatory equity ideology. So what you can see that they're doing here, unfortunately, is flipping that civil rights mantra that I was talking to you about. Title VII funds, or Title VII of the Civil Rights Act um, allows the Department of Education to withhold funds for discrimination. And so they're flipping that by saying that they're flipping that by basically saying that um, gender ideology, they can withhold funds through the Civil Rights Act on gender ideology and discriminatory equity ideology. If that hasn't happened yet, and mainly that hasn't happened yet because the large amount of funds that come from the or that go from the federal government to state education agencies and then to local school districts haven't been sent out yet for the upcoming year. So I would imagine that if there is anything that's being held up by the or by the Department of Education, that a lawsuit would hopefully occur. And Wendy says that I'm the expert, but Wendy's the one who actually alerted me to a web page on the Department of Education's website that is basically a complaint page for for somebody to basically, I guess I'll just say it because it's, in my opinion, it's true, to just like out a school district for teaching this quote unquote discriminatory equity ideology. Um, and then we are expected to see an executive order where the president will direct new Secretary McMahon to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the education department uh, based on the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by the law. This was leaked out by the Wall Street Journal and by the Washington Post earlier this week that he's expected to sign it. I do think that he was worried about the reason why it hasn't happened yet. If you were to believe the articles, is that he was concerned about the blowback on things like uh, on school lunches, which is, there is part of that formula that contributes to that. So he was concerned about, maybe things like that, the political blowback, but we do expect we expect this executive order to come soon. And so arts education, the continuing resolution again would likely fund arts education funding at the same levels as FY24. So we have the numbers there. It would be 18.39 billion. I actually shouldn't have put the Senate number. That's incorrect. So just ignore the parentheses. It would just be the numbers from FY24. So 18.39 billion, 2.19 billion for Title II, and 1.38 billion for Title IV Part A, and then the Assistance for Education program, the Assistance for Arts and Education program would be funded at 36.5 billion. There is some thought in the education world that maybe the Assistance for Arts Education program, which is a competitive grant program, that um, the administration and the Department of Education will try to eliminate that without congressional uh, approval. They can't and won't be able to do that with the title funds because those have been codified in law for some time. But there is thought that the Assistance for Arts Education Act might, or Assistance for Arts Education funding could be on the chopping block without congressional approval necessary. That's I know I went through a lot there. Uh, I guess I'll stop there and see, Wendy, if you have any thoughts, questions.
Yeah, while people put some their questions in, I had a question about this, the FY24 to 25. My understanding, I think we talked about this, that the FY25 money has already been distributed to majority of schools already, right? And
Yeah.
so in some ways this is performative and setting this up for 2026, right? Because the money's in the hands of schools and states right now. Is that correct?
The money is, and so when they fund it at FY20, when they fund FY25 at FY24 levels, that money goes in, and you might know better than me, like June or July, right? Um, that when those go, it will be the same amount as last year, um, going to local education agencies. And then what I worry and I guess I fear about at that point is where you might start to see this withholding, potentially this withholding of funds based on, a school district's DEI initiative. So I think that that's going to be the place and time where we start to see, um, potentially start to see some of that happening.
Right. But is in my understanding and is that the money is distributed to the states and then
Right.
the states distribute it. So we have opportunities in New Jersey to disrupt that, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you certainly do. And I would continue to take the guidance that you said, Wendy, at the beginning and, follow the law. And the law is that state and local governments determine curriculum, not the federal government.
Okay. So is there any other questions? I'm going to share a little bit about um, New Jersey, and then we can have another hit at asking some questions because I think it would be important to uh, get some context. I don't know about you. I had to take some extra breaths during that because I know we all are really good at reading and we've been keeping up to date, but to see it all in 6 slides is once again overwhelming. Um, and I have to say, I keep telling myself, well, this matters and we have to be very careful about the ramifications of every single piece of this, I keep saying, I live in New Jersey. I live in New Jersey. I'm so grateful to be living in New Jersey and talking to people and how they're responding. So I wanted to just share a couple things that we know. We know that in terms, we didn't even talk about immigration and how that's impacting our schools. And and while we may not be able to draw a direct line to arts education, it is clearly there is a web that this is touching all of our students in our schools. The Department of Ed has really responded well. There is a web page that they give guidance, but I think that each district has also done a really strong job of standing up for their students. I think there's some outliers there um, where their safety of students has to be lifted up maybe more. But if you talk to most superintendents, they are fighting this fight and protecting their students. Um, maybe some of our teachers will share a little bit about that too. We have joined a lawsuit with 15 other states that we are looking at the Dear Colleague letter and this DEI FAQ as well, so that we are part of this fight um, against the ramifications of all of the previously named DEI and discriminatory new laws and actions. That I think the department, you already put it in the chat, Alicia, we have some good code that's come out of the department that communities are using. And there are statutory considerations, federal and Tushar, you referred to most of these, that the Civil Rights Act of 64, but also we have strong New Jersey Administrative Code, our even our anti-bullying act and our laws against discrimination. We have a lot to go through before they can attack what we're working on. It's at least there is some law here. There is some, we know that a lot of it is intimidation and fear based, but we do have legal protections. And we did just get on February 25th, the budget uh, was presented to um, the legislature in New Jersey, and it's a $58 billion spending plan and 1.2 billion in new revenue raiser sources, that you can see new gambling and, new taxes. Um, and as you know, but I always need to be reminded that the next 4 months, the governor's proposal and bill will be there'll be opportunities for folks to have hearings. There are a couple hearings coming up in March, and it'll be signed into law hopefully by midnight on June 30th. Um, the good news is that the budget maintains the arts and cultural funding at level funding at 31.9 million for the State Council on the Arts, which is funded through the hotel motel occupancy tax. We in New Jersey are somewhat protected by the vagaries of the budget because of this motel. Did I call it tax? Smack me, it's a fee. It's not a tax. And they added some $500,000 to the 250th celebration and some money that will also be coming from the feds. And I just want to lift this up because New Jersey, we are deeply tied to American history, and um, how we tell that story in our state has been very inclusive. There have been other funders in our state who have been working with the history community, really encouraging them to tell all stories of all New Jerseyans. So I think we as arts educators need to lean into this opportunity to use the arts to tell the full scope and scale and story of our community. Um, so if you live in New Jersey and follow education news at all, you hear about the school funding formula and how it's never been fulfilled, et cetera. It's like, um, so this is the first time, well, 12.1 billion in direct formula aid to support schools in of our almost 600 districts. This is the challenge here. It includes an increase of 386 million for K-12. And there's been some movement to try to rectify the formula and the fairness module piece of this, which about so 68 or two-thirds of our districts did receive an increase in state aid, and 31% will see a decrease. This has been mitigated some by a new cap that says increases can only be 6%, limiting decreases to 3% or less. I think we're still probably going to be hearing from a lot of school districts that got walloped on this, but it is better than last year. And we like to think that if a budget is a statement of belief systems, Murphy's budget does support art, does support education, 1.3 billion going to preschool, 7.5 to high impact tutoring, um, 3 million to support grants for phone-free schools and computer science education. Um, but for us in the ed community, there is also a lot of conversation around artificial intelligence, the task force that was created a couple of years ago. Uh, I think the arts community needs to stay super connected to this conversation because it impacts how we teach, but also how art is made. There's new project around supervisor mentoring, which I think is really exciting because we don't have many art supervisors. Often we have people playing dual roles in our supervisor roles, and this gives us an opportunity, I think, to talk, at least raise the conversation about getting more arts specific supervisors in our schools and or getting those that are not trained in arts mentored appropriately. We already talked about pre-K education, but I think that this opportunity to talk about early childhood education, if you watch how um, pre-K is taught, it's filled with play, it's filled with arts, it's filled with creativity. And then when you get into kindergarten, they start stripping it out, and then all the way till 12th grade. So I think we have a lot of allies in the pre-K community that we should continue to talk to. Same thing with the literacy dollars, the $50 million that has been committed to literacy. We know that arts helps students to learn. And again, I mentioned this, the 25th, 250th celebration. So I feel like there are opportunities for us to advocate and keep continuing to work. Some other positives, um, we, I don't think we've had a sworn in commissioner for a long time. So we have a commissioner who is sworn in. It's not acting. Um, we have some of the strongest arts commitment stuff committed through code and law in New Jersey. We were talking, Priscilla and I were talking about other states have been talking about the difference between shall slash may versus um, should, which is they must. And all of our language in New Jersey for the arts is must focused. Um, so budgets are a statement of priorities. I already talked about that. And I think thank you, Alicia, for putting this in earlier. You know, I do worry about choice and vouchers, et cetera, because we do know that like we followed Ohio very carefully. In Ohio, they have had voucher programs for 5 years, I think it is, and it has done a wallop on arts education the first round that lost a lot of art educators. Although there are some interesting studies showing that as parents, as districts ask parents what they want in order to come back to public education, they are saying things like, I want my art programs back. and then they come back to public schools, which is really interesting. So let's be proactive around that. Um, so the things we're watching, and this is the one thing that the governor said too, there is uncertainty about how these block grants, how the money will flow. That would could change everything. I've heard between, maybe somebody in the room knows the exact number. I've heard that our federal funds are between, I've heard 1 billion and then I've heard 1.5 billion, which is a lot. Um, but also I think less than other states would have to make up. And there's a commitment, I think, to addressing that on our own. Um, there are some budget hearings coming up. I just want to let you know that. And that what I heard from you, Tushar, is that we really, really probably should focus not only on fighting for the FY26, but also fight for the assistance for this arts education. And I'll do some more research to see if any of those grants have come to New Jersey. But I think just in general, it's important to have that because these things are much harder to get back. The other thing that you shared with me the other day that I think is important for us is that we need to be advocating. There have been quite a few bills that have been proposed by Bonamici, Cory Booker, that are focused on arts education. Now, none of them over the past couple of years have gone to vote, et cetera. But I think we need to continue to look for these bills, get them um, entered again, brought up again, because again, Tushar, you said that it would be really hard to get these back as well.
To get the
Some of the like the Bonamici bills sort of
yeah. I think that like, whenever you lose momentum when you don't introduce a bill over the course of one Congress. So like, I've seen plenty of that happen. And so that's why we've been advised by members of Congress, that they want to reintroduce these bills. So we want to be supportive of that.
And then I know that there's been some behind the scenes, and we'll have to continue to follow through, that Andy Kim has been very interested in social emotional learning and the arts, artistic SEL, and how we can support um, our legislators. Because I think the one thing I've learned from all of this is that they need us to help them, give them information. They do not understand it. They don't understand the impact. So it's up to each of us to continue to voice our interests and our needs. And the other thing I've heard is that, this is what's always hard when you live in Jersey, right? Because we've got a lot of Democrats who support the arts. So sometimes when you feel like you're writing your legislator, you're writing the converted. They're already converted, right? But the reality is they say to us, we need your calls. We need you to have that. I need the thousands of people ringing my phone. And also, could you, I will, let's see. Um, we put this in there. We have 2 days to take action. We're going to ask questions in a second, but I want to stop share because would you talk about the appropriations um, approach to advocacy? You taught me something the other day that I did not know how to do, which was go on my legislator's website, and instead of just doing these action statements, I would click on everybody has an appropriations. You explain
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So all appropriators, or I'm sorry, all members of Congress at this point have some sort of appropriations portal where their constituents can go onto their website and advocate or request what they think a funding level should be for a particular program. So some of them are pretty sophisticated platforms, and then some of them just might be a simple Google Doc. Um, nonetheless, that is the way that members of Congress collect those requests. So you can go onto their website, find uh, and here Wendy has it up, but you can go to appropriations and that's where most of these are located. There are several, there's you go to Labor HHS, education, because that's what you're advocating for. I know that Senator Kim asks you to create an account with him, but you can definitely then go in and you can submit your request for a particular program, Title One, Title Two, Title Four, and then you can advocate. So the numbers that Wendy, you know, advocates and recommends that you advocate for, you can specifically put it into their portal. And that does carry a little bit more weight than the advocacy campaigns that we at Americans for the Arts do. They're still important in the sense that it's kind of like another way to show the importance whenever you're having hundreds and hundreds of emails come in. But it might not rank in terms of priority because I think what members of Congress, sometimes take into account is that those are campaigns, those are easy to do. Some are solicited in a way that they might not 100% know that they're even doing it. So they take these requests that you are physically going into their website and putting that information in, maybe as a little bit of a higher priority. That said, we don't have we have a finite amount of time and resources. It does take a while. So if you don't have that time, then certainly continue to do the advocacy campaign. But if you even have several folks in New Jersey doing this, I think that it's helpful and it probably um, requests, raises the priority of those requests a little bit more.
And you said Americans for the Arts is working on some documents, and
We are,
I'd
we
say
are,
the other great thing is we have Art Pride in New Jersey, who is, on top of everything as well, making it.
yeah. Yeah, so that we will be actually on a call with Arts Pride and some of our other state captains tomorrow on how to use those. So they are obviously a great resource. Wendy, I'm going to send they just aren't finalized yet. I'll send those over to you, and we can certainly talk if you have any questions, and then you can forward that information on to folks in New Jersey as well.
Thank you. So thank you, Tushar. I We're going to stay on for a few more minutes here because Arts in New Jersey has developed a great deal of resources and have recently updated them. And our team is going to walk you through some of them. I'm not sure if Monifa, if you still want to do the video, maybe we not do that later. Make sure we have enough time. I don't want you to run out of time, so think on that. So I hand it over to you, Monifa, our community activator.
Thank you, Wendy. So she mentioned the Arts Ed Now and for All, but let me start by explaining what that actually is. It's Arts Ed NJ's statewide campaign of local champions working for access, participation, quality, and equity in arts education across New Jersey's public and charter schools. And as we all have heard in these uncertain political times, it's more important than ever for our community to be, quote unquote, always ready to advocate for arts education. And so that's why our campaign includes practical advocacy tips that you can implement right away. Priscilla, would you mind sharing your screen, but go to the Arts Ed Now website? We're going to skip over the short video that we had, okay? Let me just give her one moment to bring that up. Okay. So many of the tips we're going to share today have been successfully implemented by our Youth Arts Ed Council in their school communities. While we cannot show you, we don't have time today to show you the video, we encourage you to follow us on our social media and Arts Ed NJ accounts to hear all of their inspiring stories. And you can also view the complete and unedited stories using the link that we're going to drop in the chat. So being always ready means having the tools and knowledge to advocate whenever opportunities arises. And using our artsednow.org website, what you're looking at currently, we're going to share several ways that you can start your advocacy journey today. And so the first one, knowing your arts education rights. New Jersey law guarantees arts education for all students. And on the back of that card there, we have a link to the New Jersey Administrative Code and core curriculum content standards. This document is outlining these requirements, so definitely take a look at that. The second one, and one of the most fun ones, attend your local school arts events and spread the word. Check your school events calendar. You might need to call them if you don't see it on their website. Bring your friends and family to a performance, exhibitions, and share events on your social media platforms. And see if the school has a social media account, because you should tag them. That would really be great. Also, another way is to sign up and speak up. You can become an arts ed champion through our website, which will allow you to track your progress on your advocacy journey. That's that page right there. And so heading back to our homepage, you should also check out the data dashboard. You can use our interactive school performance dashboard to identify schools in your area needing more arts education. That's a really robust data project there, and we encourage you all to visit that. And just navigating back to our homepage again, being ready also means being always ready, also means taking your advocacy to the next level. And we have several more ways for you to do that. And the first one, which our Youth Arts Ed Council did, and you'll hear that if you click that link to view their stories, you can attend school board meetings. Find out when your school board meets. You may need to do a whole lot of Googling, but it's all good. We have resources to help you prepare these for your process of going to a meeting, what that all will entail, help you prepare statements, all right there on that page. And you can also share your arts education story with us. We are always looking for your stories of how it has impacted you and your life. So definitely our campaign collects those, and we like to amplify those through e-blasts and on our social media accounts as well. And another way, you can use our Curtain Rise advocacy tools. Performances at schools are a great way to engage champions or champions to be in advocacy. And here we have tools that you can use before, during intermission, or at the end of performances to get the word out. And we provide them in multiple languages as well. And so just a reminder, check out our social media posts on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter to see how our youth council activated these advocacy tips in their school communities. And now I'm going to pass it over to Alicia, who's going to share more advanced advocacy strategies and resources.
Thank you, Monifa. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia. And like Monifa said, I'm here to discuss how you can further develop your advocacy skills and access additional resources to remain, quote unquote, always ready, hence the theme of this conversation today. And so being always ready in uncertain political times means having the complete advocacy toolkit. So here are a few more powerful advocacy strategies. Number one, advocate for your school's arts education budget. That requires a full understanding of the budget. And then you can, where Priscilla has just clicked, you can review our tools and include the templates that we've built out for you along with the supporting materials. All right, number two. You can reach out when you have concerns. So use our Get Help feature on the website if you have access issues in your community. Here you will get a direct line of communication with our team for support and guidance. The next one is write to your local officials. Let elected representatives know that arts education matters in their community. And we provide in this link some sample language you can use to get started. To build advocacy skills further, you can build out a targeted campaign, either using some of ours. Our Yesterday Today campaign is very popular. Basically, yesterday we were art students. Today we are doctors, neurologists, astronauts, things like that. This idea that art students can be anything and amount to great things in their future. You can also utilize our Dance is Education and Theater is Education campaign materials, being the two most underrepresented arts forms in schools. We, as Arts Ed, have also leaned into this campaign. And the last one is to check out our past Action Lab series. Are you able to go back to the main homepage? Awesome. So right next to it is the Action Lab series. You can always review the videos and materials to develop and practice advocacy skills for the future.
Excellent. Thank you, Alicia. So finally, our last bit here, I'm excited to announce our 2025 Arts Education Advocacy Calendar featuring members of our Youth Arts Ed Council. This calendar combines student testimonials with monthly advocacy strategies. Each month spotlights a council member's journey, demonstrating how arts education shapes confident, creative, and successful students. This calendar would make a great gift for your educators, administrators, or legislators. So we also invite you to visit our website at artsednow.org to access all of these resources that we've mentioned today. And please let us know if you have any questions on anything that we have presented. Wendy, I'll send it back to you.
And I wanted to also share this link to some materials that that we've shared. All these resources are in this link that you can find everything there. And we will add to it, if it's okay with you, Tushar, the PowerPoint that you provided. Is it okay to provide that? And our PowerPoint today, so you can sort of have, because there was a lot of information that was shared, and it's nice to have it in one place. So we will add that. This will be our ongoing sort of update, always ready site that we will keep ready for you. I just want to thank everybody, and I did put it in the chat. Ennis Carter is with us today, Social Impact Studios. And I'm so grateful to her for our 10 years of working together for the Arts Ed Now campaign and for all. There's some really great other tools in there. For example, I direct you to the power mapping tool, because sometimes when we're doing this work, we don't realize how many people and connections we have and the power we actually have. And sometimes if you just write it down, that kicks off a river of opportunities and connections. So I want to thank everybody for being here today. Next time, we promise we will be having more opportunities for discussion and feedback from all of our community, and as well as updates as things change by the minute. I don't even want to go back to the newspaper to see what else has happened while we were on this call. So thank you all for being here, and stay in touch. And please let us know if there's anything that we could do to help support your efforts.